Welcome to our episode of Biblical Archaeology, From the Ground Down. Presented by Bible Interact and hosted by Dr. George Sparks. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of the Bible from leading experts in the field of archaeology.
Well, good day, people. My name is Dr. George Sparks, and this is Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down, sponsored by Bible Interact, which I'm sure you already know by now. With me, my special guest is Dr. David Graves. And Dr. David Graves, PhD from the University of Aberdeen, Scotland, a native of Canada. Matter of fact, welcome back home from Portugal. Now he's back in Canada. That doesn't look like Canada in your slide, but I'll let that go for a second. He's a native of Canada, although he still travels the world. He's been involved in teaching the Bible and archaeology for more than 35 years. He's a retired assistant professor from Liberty University, Rawlings School of Divinity in Lynchburg, Virginia. He has taught archaeology at Oxford University, England, and also provided tours at the Ashmolean as well as the British Museum. He's traveled the Middle East pretty extensively, been involved in the Mount Ararat project, a research project, a consultant for National Geographic Productions. He's also been involved in a number of different excavations, such as the Qumran, the Temple Mount Sifting Program, also Tel Shiloh in Israel. And of course, his many years of experience in Jordan at the Tel El Hammam excavation, which I see you got your shirt on today. It says Tel El Hammam, and it says, I can't read that one. It says something project staff.
Yeah.
What's the whole? I know you were my dig supervisor, but does it say George's supervisor at Tel El Hammam? Okay, nice. So today we are going to talk about, well, if I say Tel El Daba, people are going to go like, what? Tel El Daba? It sounds like something you use for bingo, doesn't it? It's a big bingo game in Egypt. We call it Tel El Daba. Not really, folks. Dr. Graves, I'm excited. Welcome.
Good to be with you, George.
Before you take off, that slide in the back of you, you got to move your head so everybody can see you. That little guy in the back, we'll get back to it at the end of the program. That's Dr. Graves. Last week.
That's in my earlier years when I was I think it was my second trip to the Middle East, and so that's before my beard, and so I go way back with all of this research stuff. Well, we're going to talk today about a site in Egypt. It's called Tel El Daba. It's believed to be Avaris and Pi-Ramses that's mentioned in the Old Testament, and it's called, in today's language, Esbet Helmi. So it's a spot up in the Delta region. The material I'm going to present today is based on my book on the archaeology of biblical people, also in the archaeology of the Old Testament. And you'll see here I've got a new image that shows the footnotes that I have on every page. So the books are filled with all kinds of resources for anybody that wants to learn a little bit more in those books. My most recent one that was published about a week ago is the History of Biblical Archaeology. And I've grouped it all by the different countries. And I did a complete colorization of all the old black and white photographs. And here we have one of Austin Henry Layard, Petrie on the cover. So that's my newest work. And again, it also has the footnotes on every page that everybody. So if you want to learn a little bit about the history of archaeology, biblical archaeology, that's the book for you. Well, let's get back to what we're talking about. Tel El Daba, Esbet Helmi. It's located right up there in the Delta region, just south of Tanis. People might recall Tanis as being the spot where Indiana Jones movie was made. There's another spot, Tel El Raba and Muskuta. We visited all of those sites. It was excavated in 1941 and 42 by Habachi, an Egyptian antiquity service. And then in 1966 to 1980, a guy by the name of Manfred Bietek, he excavated it. He's an Austrian, and from the Austrian Archaeological Institute, confirmed it as the Hyksos capital of Avaris. Now, the biblical significance, this is likely the Ramses and Avaris where Jacob and Joseph lived and Moses spent time. So that's the biblical relevance to this particular place. Scholars, the minimalists, always bring up the argument that, well, there's no evidence for, the Exodus. There's no evidence that the Israelites lived in Egypt. Well, this evidence that I'm presenting today is a stark rebuttal to that complaint and that argument. Joseph and Jacob and Moses, according to the scriptures, lived in Ramses or Avaris, and of course, it's been excavated. So what evidence do we have that might link it to the biblical accounts? These are my photographs when I was there, 2005. This is like stepping back in time with the mud brick homes, children out playing around the yard, laundry on or carpet on the line, and a couple of goats in the yard. This is very much like it was back in the Old Testament time periods. Here is an overview of it. You can see some of the threshing floors, all that grass on the right-hand side. That would be from the threshing floors. You can see the remains of the buildings at the very bottom. And as I said, it has been excavated. And here I am in my younger years, 2005, with my hand on one of the walls made of mud brick. Now, this mud brick is rather interesting. This mud brick was made without straw. Now, if everybody can remember their Bible, Pharaoh's, as a punishment to the Israelites that were living there, after Moses came and gave his demands, stated that the Israelites were now going to have to make mud brick without straw. Now, straw is like rebar and concrete in a modern context. In ancient times, they put straw in the clay to give it some stability, like you would with rebar in concrete. And so it was more difficult for them to keep the mud bricks together and dry them without the straw in the mud brick. Now, this is not the only site where we have bricks made without straw in Egypt. There are other places where it is found, but it's really interesting that it's found in a place where they believe the Bible says that Joshua and Joseph and Moses spent time or lived. Here's another one of the walls, mud brick made without straw. The other thing that's significant when I was there was I spotted this piece of pottery in the wall. Now, we use pottery for dating, and you can find pottery in situ, that is in its original location. You can date the wall, and there's a close-up of it. And here's Gary Byers. We were on the trip together, holding it up, giving a stance on the pottery. It's a bowl. It looks as though it's from the, probably late Middle Bronze, maybe late Bronze Age, the early period of that. My memory goes way back now to 2005, so it's still a little foggy. But Gary and I both suspect that this was a bowl. He's a pretty good pottery expert. I'm not so much. That's not one of my specialties. But again, to have a piece of pottery from the wall helps us date the wall. And the mud brick, there you can see it, a close-up of it. There's no straw in it. When there's straw in the mud brick wall, you can see it pretty clearly. Here you can see the mud bricks, the black and the light colors, very distinguishable from the mud brick there. One of the walls, the buildings. And so it's suspected that it was the royal citadel of Moses' time. And so BTEC found a complex of buildings made of mud brick. Moses likely spent a great deal of time there, where he was educated in the wisdom of the Egyptians. And here we have a large home. This is not just a normal home. It's more like a palace. They call it Palace F. The areas that were excavated and the reconstruction of it there, a drawing. And there's Pi Ramses and Avaris. And in red is Joseph's palace, what they believe to be Joseph's palace. We didn't find a sign on the door saying, "Welcome to Joseph's palace," but these large palaces were built. And there's the reproduction also of the Nile River branch that would have gone through the site and has since dried up, but they can see where the water would have gone. Here is a cross-section of the central housing complex at Avaris. I did this particular drawing for a book by Doug Petrovich on the history of the Egyptians. And there is the palace right there, Jacob's house, as it would have been originally in Stratum at D9. He's got a lot more information in his book. The earliest remains of Asiatics at Tel Dabe include houses and tombs from the 12th to the 19th century BC, called Rautri, or the door of the two roads at the time. And the Asiatic settlement was probably Ramses' Genesis 47, a later name for the same site where Jacob and his family settled in Goshen, the land of Goshen, or the Delta region. And another interesting artifact that was still there today was the empty sarcophagus. We didn't have anybody still buried there. The individual bones have been removed. But they did find an interesting statue of an Asiatic. And we know that they were an Asiatic because of the hairstyle, this what we call a mushroom hairstyle. Now, I did a painting for the book for Doug Petrovich, and here's the statue, and I did this in watercolor for him based on the statue that was discovered and the remains. And of course, there's the Egyptian word there for incense, highlighted, possibly Jacob. The origin of the Hebrews is the book here. Here's Doug and the book that I did this drawing for, and I did all the plates for his book. There's a reconstruction of Palace F at Ramses. This was courtesy of the Associates for Biblical Research. You can see how the palace would have been right on the water. And of course, the whole story of Moses in the water. This is the pharaonic village in Cairo, Egypt, where they have reproduced the homes, what they would have looked like. They have you can go down the river of the Nile, and they have a pharaonic village where you can tour it. And you can see the basket there representing what possibly Moses's basket might have looked like. Remember, he was put out on the water and then taken in. Here is a basket from that time period, what they would have looked like, courtesy of Mike Ludini. He is our photographer from one of the museums in Cairo. And this is what the baskets would have looked like, made out of a reed, and it's all sewn together. The Egyptian documents from the annals of Amenhotep II, Ken Kitchen, says there's a number of prisoners brought from the foreign land, 1,554 Asiatics. Line 13, as slave tribute from a Levantine ruler, that is an Asiatic. 1,002 Asiatics were brought. These slaves that were captured and brought to Egypt. Slaves bought on the Levant trade mission, 65 Asiatics. So many Asiatics lived and worked as slaves throughout the Nile Valley and throughout the Delta, and lived in the Delta regions. 4-room houses have been identified. The 4-room house is the traditional Israelite-style homes. Whenever we find a 4-room house, it's generally associated with Israelites. That's the style that they preferred. and the ones we find in the archaeological record. Not every single four-room house is Israelite, but they're the ones that chose those kinds of homes. Here are some Philistines in handcuffs that were brought back. You see that they have their arms up over their heads, and some in front of on the right, you see one that's handcuffed around his neck. So that's how they would bring their slaves back from conquest. So that's a little bit of an overview of Tel Dabe and some of the significance to the biblical record about their time in the Delta region or Egypt. Any questions, George? Oh, there's your duck-billed axe.
And you said it exactly right, Doctor. This is archaeology can be so difficult. If I said, what does this look like? It looks like a duck's bill. And we call it you said it,
A duck's bill axe, yes.
Yeah.
I've got
so
a good
this would date.
I'll put up a good photograph. I've got a good photograph of all the weapons that were used with the sickle sword and the duck bill and so on that will give everybody a good idea what they look like. And it's all labeled. So beautiful.
It's great intact in it. Let me see if I can find another piece. I don't know if we would call this an epsilon axe. It looks like the Greek E, so they call it epsilon.
Epsilon axe, yeah.
And what else? Of course, they didn't have buttons like we have buttons on our shirts. They used, and this is a toggle pin.
Yeah, toggle pin.
So I can imagine that on that coat of many colors, they were probably, like if I had my button and it's not here, and we'd have to weave it through the garment, and this is the way it would fasten the garment. And what's very interesting to me is that in some of you have to look very carefully and know what to look for. But usually in the tomb of a woman, you're going to see jewelry. But in the tomb of a male, usually you find weapons. And so nothing changes, right? Boys and their toys.
When somebody would see that, they would think that's a hat pin or a hairpin. But no, this is for the garments.
It's for the garments. Actually, this is a really nice one. I've seen them quite long. They can go quite, as you can see that this one's actually, the point is broken off. It should probably extend this much further. But as the garments rot away and the body decomposes, usually you find these through the rib cages. And if you look very carefully, I should say we look very carefully at some tomb pictures, such as from Jericho. Some of Kathleen, is it Kathleen Kenyon? Yeah, Kathleen Kenyon's books. You'll see the toggle pins in the rib cages. And I thought, well, that's some interesting stuff. I got a dagger, but I have to go up there and get it. I have to walk around and get it. Maybe impromptu, if you don't mind. I'll grab it. And,
sure. It'd be good for our audience to see, I think, some of the weapons from the time period. I see you've got an Iron Age jar there on the floor and the two handles.
Yeah, because I got up and moved, right?
So, yeah, I can see the Iron Age jar. I recovered one of those, identical almost, at Tel El Hammam. So Iron Age 2B.
Here we go.
Oh, yes. Okay, very good.
Of course, here's what we call the pommel. You can see the rivets right here that attached to the metal. And you'd have like a wooden handle, two pieces, which would be riveted on. And what holds those two pieces together, right, it'd be fitted like this, would be the pommel at the end.
Okay.
And you can see the little hole here where they had a pin, which actually held this in place. So you have something that gave the handle stability.
Very good.
Well, makes it so the audience can see this. So we got something from the Hyksos period. Just happened to have it. Isn't that cool? I wish I was a little bit more together today. So you got the dagger, the epsilon axe, and the very cool duck's bill. So once again, the listening audience, we got a lot of things planned thanks to Dr. Graves here. And we're going to share those in the future. So I don't know what your schedule is today. Imagine you got to get going. I still got to work today. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been good.
Hey, and I appreciate that slide presentation that you made for Bible Interact. It's the intro, and I've included it into two podcasts, and it'll be on this one as well. So
Good.
once again, thank you for everything you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Oh, always
And
good.
people, don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, and show some love and get on the internet, search up his books, and get his books. Like I said, I always keep them on hand. I have them by my bed, and I have them here as also resources. And people think, "What do you mean?" I'm talking about really, people. Come on, now you think I'm done? I'm not done yet. Come on, and you keep on going, and more books. And now, if I keep on going, I'm gonna be too tired to go to the gym because these are getting heavy.
Well, I appreciate the plug for the books, and I do it because I love it, and I'm glad that the podcast is bringing in some great interviews and great individuals. So it's just exposing the Christian world to what's happening out there in modern day archaeology. And a lot of us are getting old, and we need to pass it on to the younger generation.
That's right, and it becomes a resource. So everybody, like and subscribe. I really appreciate what this year has done. We actually have doubled in subscriptions. Just fantastic. And with that, we get new viewers of interest. And oh, we got Dr. Jody Magnus is going to be on the program. She's
Wow.
got a new book out. She wrote about, I think, is Jerusalem Through the Ages by Dr. Jody Magnus, and she'll be here as
Okay.
well. Doctor, thank you for your time. I appreciate everything you've done. I really do. And you
You're
have a
more
great
than
day.
welcome. Yep. God bless.